Okay, great. So can I get a motion to call the meeting to order?
I motion to call the meeting to order.
Charmaine, and a second.
This is Michelle, and I'll second.
And Michelle seconds. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know how Martha does this and sounds so natural.
Doing good.
Yeah. Okay. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move
And
to
that's-
approve the agenda.
Thank you, Tina. And anybody to second that?
I second.
Thank you, Charmaine. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And did anyone get a chance to look over the last meeting's minutes? And can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I do want to note Deb DeTore, board member, is absent today. She did send in a comment about the minutes. She noticed that there was a section where we had noted that Martha moved to approve something. And so we did fix that to show that Martha asked for a motion, and then another member moved as a first, another a second, and all approved. That change has already been made to this draft that you're looking at now.
Okay, cool. Okay, were there any other edits that needed to be made? All right, anybody want to motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the updated minutes.
Thank you, Tina. And a second.
I second.
All right, thank you, Charmaine. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, and we do take public comment. I think I see someone in the audience, but I'm assuming that's our staff member to be introduced to. So yeah, if there's no public comments, I think we can move to that part of the agenda.
Awesome. Well, I really, it's been great to introduce staff members one by one. And today, I am really honored to introduce Olga Kovarzina. I almost messed up your name. We call her Kay. She came to us from the higher ed world in corrections. And so she had been working in adult education in a correctional setting when she decided to join us at Gordon Burnell. She does work at our MDC campus, and her title is an interventionist. She's not a teacher of record, meaning she's not the math teacher or the science teacher or the humanities teacher. She works with all students to help them make progress, and she really focuses on students, a very particular subpopulation of our students out at MDC. We have as many of our high school students as possible move into what we call a school pod, where they can leave the pod and attend classes in the classroom. But some of our youth at the jail are not eligible to move into the school pod, and that can be for a variety of reasons. It can be because they are under medical care or psychiatric care. It could mean that they have a co-defendant or a keep away that's already in school that kind of beat them to it. It could mean that their classification is not appropriate for that dormitory setting, or they could be experiencing disciplinary action by the jail and therefore not being allowed to move to school. And Kay really is one of our very special staff members who meets with those students regularly who cannot come to the school pod and attend classes like some of their peers. And so while a lot of our high school staff go out into the pods to meet with these students, to drop things off, to pick things up, Kay really sits with them for long periods of time and works with them and really provides that critical direct instruction that students need to engage with material and to do well with material. She is excellent at building relationship both with students and with staff, because if you can imagine, she has to work with a variety of correctional officers, sergeants, lieutenants, and captains to gain access. Some of these students are held in some unusual spaces throughout the facility. And Kay is not only comfortable with that and at that, she's persistent at it. and she wins over the correctional staff in ways where some of our other staff members fail. Kay is often able to spend really valuable instructional time with students who really need her. Students respect her greatly, look forward to meeting with her, ask her to come and meet with them at Northworth, make note of her at graduation ceremonies. I'm so grateful for your work, Kay, and for your time. And I'll pass off the mic to you with the same question that I ask all of our staff members that join us. Just how do you see your mission and vision play out in the work that you do daily? And so thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So yes, like as you mentioned, my role is really trying to reach students who otherwise cannot be reached by the teachers of record. And one of the disadvantages of the position is that it's hard to give everyone enough time every week. But one of the advantages is that for the most part, since there tends to be like 1 or 2 students per pod, I get to work with them one-on-one. So that's something that I experience as an advantage, because when I was teaching in prison, it was a regular classroom, and discipline sometimes was an issue, or disruptiveness, but often the same individuals who are really hard to handle in a group setting, there's that opportunity to reach them differently in a one-on-one setting, and it becomes a very different experience. Also, to build that trust and relationships, it happens much faster and more easy. So yes, it has been very fulfilling, and unfortunately, since a lot of students do move on eventually to the Department of Corrections, we don't always manage to graduate them on time, and other disruptions happen. So I try to see my mission as trying to give them whatever I can in that in whatever time that we have with them, which sometimes is long and sometimes is short, and sometimes most of the time is unpredictable. So and there are students who are very intelligent, at times even gifted, and there are others who struggle and have special education needs. So I just try to equip them with whatever skills that can be useful, regardless, depending on where their path ends up going. One of the concerns that we have been experiencing collectively is the transitioning, and including for students who get released, how to catch them effectively on the outside. Because even if we build that relationship and motivate them to come, there are just so many hurdles, and the system is so difficult to navigate. So that's one of our concerns.
Thank you, Kay. I appreciate your insight and your perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Kay. Governing council members, any questions for Kay that you all have, or any comments?
I think I'll just ask one quick thing, if you don't mind, Olga. You had a wonderful introduction from Beth. But I'm wondering, is there something you would like us as a board to know about the work you're doing that may not have been mentioned?
Well, maybe sometimes I feel like one area which is causes some frustration is sometimes insufficient attention to individual students, and the time and attention that we give to individuals. So that could be increased. And yeah, like I just said, we have been very worried and concerned about the rate of students who really if they get released, they don't make it on the outside. there are not so many of them who are able to come to school or for a variety of reasons. And when they come, sometimes things just don't happen as far as being able to provide them with the needed support. And that sometimes becomes a frustration, because then I question my role, because then I go somewhere in the city and see my former students somewhere in the war zone doing drugs or being homeless, and I ask myself, what is my role? I just such and such person now is a slightly more educated homeless drug addict, as opposed to being a regular homeless drug addict. So those types of things are a challenge.
I think you-
Go ahead, Michelle.
no, I'm just going to say that I came from an early intervention field. So I worked with families with children who were a variety of reasons. But the one thing I always reminded my staff, and it just made me think of it when you said, oh, I'm just a higher educated drug addict. But we never, I don't think that the work we do now, we're going to see unless we can see those individuals' children and their children's children. So I think what we're doing now is for now, but where the results are in the future. So I just appreciate what you do. I think you do some of the hardest work there really is. So,
well, I don't think of it as hard. It's all just a play. When you like what you do, it's you don't think of it as work.
That's true. So, well, thank you for that.
Thank you, Kay. You're welcome to stay. It's a fully packed agenda, and so if you'd like to stay, you're welcome to. But also, we recognize that you are off contract and stayed to meet with us. So thank you so much. We appreciate you coming and sharing your perspective. And I was and just we talk about being a non-traditional school. And within the school, Kay really reaches the most difficult students in terms of the most marginalized and most at promise as well. And so those seeds are being planted, and the future hopefully is bright for many of the people she works with. So thank you, Kay. I appreciate your time, and I'll pass it back to Sabah.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you, Kay, so much. Really appreciate hearing about all the work you're doing, especially making the time that people spend in MDC that little bit brighter. I think is super, super important, regardless of what happens when they are released. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to our agenda, there's no past business to go through. So we are going to move on to current business, starting with the finance review. So I will pass it over to Sammy to do that.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So we are going to go through the finance packet fairly quickly, just because we do have the budget packet to go over, and it's a little bit more time consuming. And so, oh, is it sharing?
You are sharing, yes, Sammy.
It's telling me the host asked me to start my video.
Oh. Well, maybe you can turn your video on camera, since your sound is now coming through your phone.
Let's see.
There we go. Now we can see you. Thanks, Sammy.
Hopefully my phone still works. Let me know if nobody
It does.
can
So
hear.
you sound great.
We were having that problem earlier. Okay. Perfect. So we don't have any bars this month, so we're going to jump right into our analysis and kind of some of our charts. Like I said, I'm going to go fairly quickly, so just stop me if you have any questions. Our expenditures budgeted and projected look good for this month. We have higher percentages in our reimbursable funds, which is great. And then any that are not super high, it's just a carryover fund, and we'll be carrying it forward next month or next year. We're not as worried about those ones, but we do want to get these federal funds all spent down. And so we are actively working on that. We are receiving our revenue as we've been budgeting. Of course, we've received a lot of capital outlay funds right now because of our principal payments that we made towards the building. Our yearly expenditure comparison right here, you can see those principal payments in these 3 months. And then you'll see our February and March have gone back to what our normal flow looks like. And so there's not any drastic changes there. Looking at our estimated expenditures by function and by object, of course, we like to look at our function to see our instruction and instructional support, see where that spending is at. We're still staying pretty consistent at that about 51%. And of course, these numbers are also skewed because of that principal payment. Our capital did increase significantly with that, and so the numbers will be skewed for the rest of the year. Our liquidity right now, we are sitting at about a 7.53, so about 7 months of cash on hand to cover our monthly recurring expenses. You guys will see this drop throughout the remainder of this year because there is talk right now of a cash sweep from the state. And so Beth and I have been working on a plan. If that does happen, we would rather spend the money on the school than have the state take it. And so they will be looking at our cash balances at the end of the year. And so if we can spend some of these cash balances down now, then we are going to be in a better shape so they don't take as much of our money. There's nothing set in stone right now. There's just been talk of it basically.
Sammy, I'll jump in very quickly, just with a comment about the possible cash sweep. What we're hearing from people who are having these conversations is that there's only really one situation, and that will likely happen this summer, and that is if the federal budget does not include Medicaid in the same way that the federal House passed a budget with very little funds allocated to Medicaid. And if the federal Senate passes that budget, and there really are the drastic cuts to Medicaid that some are expecting, then the state is going to work as hard as it can to mitigate the impact on its citizens. And it is in that case that they are anticipating a possible special session and a cash balance sweep. If that doesn't happen at the federal level, then all of this talk goes away. But if that does happen at the federal level, then we're being told to be prepared to have cash balances swept with a snapshot of the end of the fiscal year. 6/30/25 would be the snapshot that they would take. And so that's what we're hearing, and we're being lawyers, legislators alike are recommending that we get down to a particular either percentage or 3 months of expenses. And so I included a copy of our current policy in this month's director's report, and intend to have us revisit that policy at the May meeting in terms of what the board would like to keep in our reserves. And so our goal is to spend all of our cash balance above that reserve number. And so we'll continue to talk about this, and I'll share documents leading up to the May meeting. But that's just a little background information about what we're hearing is possible. Thank you, Sammy.
Thank you, Beth. Does anybody have any questions on that? No? Okay, we will keep going. Our budget analysis, of course, is just a more detailed breakout of the charts above, showing all of our funds, how much we have budgeted, how much we've spent, how much is encumbered, and what is remaining. And so if you have any questions on that, let me know. Our checklisting report, did anybody have questions on this? Tina brought up a great point during our finance committee meeting. We do have a lot of vendors that it's just their name. And so if you do have specific questions on what these vendors are providing, it's pretty much all contract services for different programs or different support areas. Just let us know, and we can get Beth was talking about getting like a cheat sheet going so that everyone knows what those services are that are being provided. Any questions? Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and skip down to the bank reconciliation and just show that we do balance out. Everything ties out. And then our outstanding listing isn't too big. We have one check from December that we've already been in contact with the vendor, so that should be going away soon. Any questions on any of the financials? All righty, we're gonna get into budget. So this, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt. Beth will be chiming in on little pieces too, just so that we can make sure that everyone's on the same page. But I do just want to preface, and Beth, you can add to this as well, but these numbers are based on projections that we are projecting as the school. We currently do not have the calculator tool that is used to accurately project our revenue for next year. We are waiting on it from PED. We probably won't get it till next month, is what my budget analyst has told me. And that could change our funding one way or another. One of the big ones is our at-risk funding. And Beth, did you want to talk about that?
Sure. The majority of our funding that comes from SEG, the State Equalization Guarantee, is the result of a unit value, which has been determined, or at least preliminary determined by PED, that gets plugged into a really fancy formula. And the formula is changing pretty drastically this year as compared to the last few years. And they are moving away from specifically identifying at-risk funding from being an average based on geographic location to what they intend to be a more responsive calculation based on the population that we serve. And so they used to determine at-risk based on geography, mobility, and a few other factors. And now they are basing it, the majority of it, on what they're calling the Family Income Index, which is going to be really beneficial to some populations. But I've been trying to be vocal in several areas for the last couple of years that I have concerns about how accurate it will be about our population. So the majority of the at-risk funding multiplier using this new funding formula is based on income tax records that the PED is verifying with the Tax and Revenue Department. My concern is that the most marginalized populations don't participate in things like income taxes. They don't file. And so it's concerning to me to really see how they are assigning Gordon Burnell Charter School with an at-risk index or multiplier in this funding formula. And time will tell. It's a new program. It was passed by the legislature with the best of intentions of having the funding follow the right families. And it's new, and I'm uncertain on how it's going to shake out for us. So that's a big unknown in the new funding formula for us, because we're not able to, at this point, see how they calculated our at-risk multiplier for us yet. And then also just want to add, why are we approving a budget so early if it's not due until June? And it's because we're a local charter and we have to have a board approved budget that then APS can take to their board and approve on our behalf. So we're not only up against a PED timeline, but an APS timeline. And so while this budget is really early because we don't know some of the really important numbers, it's necessary so that we can get it moved through all of the important hoops at Albuquerque Public Schools so that we are compliant. And then we have every intention of revisiting it later. Probably the July-August meeting is when we'll have the most accurate numbers, award letters, calculations, and so. But this is necessary because APS has to get it before their board, showing that our board has approved a projected and proposed budget for next year. So thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Beth. But yeah, we just want to preface with that as we go into this, because these numbers are subject to change, basically, as we get more information. And so these first few pages are just kind of a quick overview, our table of contents, what we're going to go over, of course, our governing council and our management team. Here we have just an overview of budget analysis. So budget highlights. The school was able to balance our budget without using any cash carryover. So we were able to use all current revenue, new year revenue to balance our budget. We have a 4% increase for all staff. And then we also have about a 9.95% increase in health benefits and a 4% increase in dental benefits. So we will see those affect the budget this year as well. Our unit value that Beth was talking about that the state does set, it did increase by almost 4%, about 3.78%, for a total of $6,801.35. And so that's great to see that go up. It's definitely necessary for all of the other costs that are going up. As we said, we don't have that tool yet, so we cannot calculate our K-12 plus days, which is we get additional funding for extending our calendar past 180 days, and then past 190 days, you get a different multiplier. But it is a pretty significant portion of funding that we receive from that. And so I didn't want to put a number on here and have it change drastically when we got our tool. And so once we get that, we will have that final number. Our overall budget does show an increase based on a few factors that will show kind of here. We see our ancillary, which is special education funding, did increase pretty significantly. But our TCI, which is our teacher cost index, it's how much money we get for higher level teachers. If you have higher level teachers, you get paid more. If you have level 1 teachers, it almost hurts you and you lose a little bit of money. And so we do have a few of those lower level teachers this year and last year. So we have seen a little bit of a decrease in our TCI. But we do see an increase in our students not because we have more students, but because the multiplier for those students has also increased. And so that's what the $136,000 is that increase in the multiplier. And overall, we're going to see about a 14% increase in our school specific funding.
Tammy, can I say something really quick?
Sure.
It's just a little bit of a side, but I did want to mention, this year's teacher pool looks like that they are a TCI decrease. And I just have to say that both of our level 1 teachers that caused that increase are actually very experienced educators. They're just new to the PED system. Actually, several of them came from adult ed and or higher education. And so even those years of experience does not mean that they get to move up the PED scale. They start as level 1 teachers coming in. And then our other level 1 teacher this year came to us from a private school. And so she has decades of experience and is really a high quality teacher, but again, never worked for PED. And so starts at that level 1 PED licensure. So just throwing that out there. Sometimes even the numbers or the licensure levels can be misleading in terms of experience and in education. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Beth. And so again, this next page just does highlight some of those changes that we've gone over. We still have to meet a minimum instruction hours, which we're meeting. Those K-12 plus days, this is that multiplier that we will get for going over 180 and then going over 190. We do still have to meet the minimum hourly rate of $15 an hour. The EA minimums did not increase this year. It's still at $25,000, but the school does pay above that already. And so we didn't have to worry about that. But our teacher level minimums did increase $5,000 each. And so we have 55, 65, 75 for next year. And because our level 3s increased, our principal minimums also increase. And so that's what this changes, because the factor is multiplied against a level 3 teacher's salary. And so all of our principal minimums did go up. Any questions on those general updates? No? Perfect. We'll keep going. So this is just a quick budget summary. This is our overall budget. We're sitting at about 7.1 million, which does include projected new revenue as well as cash carryover. As I was saying, for SEG, we are hoping to see approximately a 14% increase from this year to next year because of those changes in the unit value, special ed, all of that. We are still waiting on award letters for most of our special revenue funds from APS and from other entities. And so all of our amounts are based on current year and are subject to change. We do have our capital outlay funding as well. We did get our preliminary kind of award, and we are sitting about 935,000, which is great. We do already have a plan for all of that money for the new building to add an elevator, which will be great. And so you will see though that the majority of our funding is going to be those general funds, so operational and then our food service fund. And again, just stop me if you guys have any questions as I go. So looking at our revenue summary, this is just a breakout of all of our funding sources, the revenue that we got this year versus next year. Like I said, you can see our SCG going up about that 14%. I'm just going to kind of go line by line through the funds. We are not budgeting for our Pathways grant because it is a new grant cycle and we do need to reapply. And so we don't want to be reliant on that money for next year if we're not going to get it. And that's why it's not budgeted. We did see a decrease in our Title I funding. And so this is because all APS charters did lose the funding for the interventionist position. We had 3 funding sources from Title I and we lost the 1 interventionist. But our Title I main grant did go up a little bit. And so it's about $73,000 decrease, where if we would have lost the full position for the interventionist, it was about 105,000, I think 103,000. And so because we had a slight increase in the main fund, it kind of balanced it out a little bit better. So it's not as significant of a decrease. Our Title III is going away. It is a very difficult fund to spend. We try every year, and a lot of the time PED will deny what we're requesting to buy because it's very specific. And so APS has decided that they are just not allocating it to most of their charters anymore. Our Perkins grants, both of them, again, we're not sure if we're getting them. We decided with Perkins and CTE that we are not going to budget for them in our initial budget, but if we get them, then we will just bar them in the fall. They aren't significant amounts, but we do still use that funding. Our next decrease, our city and county grants. We are not sure again if we're going to get that this upcoming year. We are applying for it for our transitional housing program, but we didn't want to budget it in case we didn't get it. And then finally, our private direct grants. That was a one-time Sprouts grant that we got to start our community garden at the school. And so we're not expecting to get it again. Our Go Bond lease assistance, Go Bond, we might have a little bit of carryover, but we are spending most of that money this year. And so we might see a little bit next year, but we haven't received any new allocations as of right now. And then lease assistance, we are going to receive it next year, but they do not let us budget for it until the application is approved, and then they will send us the award in the fall. And so that's why we always bar that later in the school year. Then again, our capital outlay money, it did go down slightly this year. Last year we had 1.1 million. This year is 935,000. But again, we've already spent that 1.5 or 1.1 million, and we already have a plan for the 935. And so just a slight decrease there. Any questions on any of these?
I mean, I'll just jump in with one more comment, and then please I'm not trying to interrupt other questions that people might have. But just an example of how quickly some of these things can change and how we will have more accurate numbers, a few months from now. Today, Sammy and I received notification that community school and family engagement grant is going from 105,000 to a max of 40,000. And so, we're expecting some new monies to come in. And we also know that some of these numbers could decrease as well. And so it's just an example of how it's a constant moving thing. And even after we get a lot of this, we will spend all of next fiscal year doing the bars as the numbers continue to change up and down. And so just acknowledging how things can change daily.
Mm-hmm. Any questions on our revenue? Perfect. We'll keep going. So this is our program cost review. So this is a deeper look at our SEG funding. This specifically is that tool that we were talking about that we don't have still. And so these are based on the numbers that we had available the new unit value, but we are still potentially missing some items that will make it more accurate. We are projecting right now for about a 14% increase. That's mainly due to, as you can see, that grade levels. This is that multiplier. So we didn't necessarily have an increase in students, but the multiplier increased, our unit value increased, and so we are seeing an increase there. Our TCI did decrease because of those lower level teachers. And then our special ed programs all saw a pretty good increase. This at risk, again, it's a slight increase. It's subject to change more out of the other ones than more of this one than any of the other ones, because our funding calculation is changing for that formula. Our K-12 plus days, again, is also subject to change. This is just based off of what we had last year. But once we get that tool, we can calculate that final dollar amount. Any questions on our SEG funding, where it's coming from? Perfect. So these are our expenditures. So as we said, we did not have to utilize any cash carryover at this time to balance our budget, which is great. So we were able to use all new revenue to balance and then put the rest in our reserve or try to spend it this year. We do have carryover anticipated in operational, instructional materials, private grants, SB9, SB9 cash, as well as HB 33. And so just looking at this bottom pie chart, these are expenditures by function code. And this is just our operational fund. And you'll see our instruction is at about 38% right now. Our classroom support is about 16%. So that brings it up to about a 54% for instruction and support. This is a slight decrease from what we've seen in the past for the school, just because our administrative function did go up this year. We are budgeting for a principal position. One of our assistant principals is moving into that principal position at the MDC campus. And so we did see an increase there because the principal minimums did increase. And so our administrative costs are going to increase. This is typical for our structure of school. We have 2 campuses. We have to have multiple administrators at each campus. And so that's why we see that percentage is a little bit higher. This is our function code breakout, but this is all funds. So not just operational, but all funds. And so you can see that there was a slight increase in our instructional. That's due to the salary and benefit increases for the teachers and staff. But you'll see that we did have a decrease in our classroom support. Pretty significant decrease. This is because we did remove 2 positions coming out of that function. So 2 full FTEs were removed out of there, and that's why we see that decrease. Administration, again, we have the new principal position, and then our building and plant, you'll see building and plant and property for all of our graphs are going to be skewed because of our principal payments. So those big principal payments, we're not planning on making big ones again next year. And so we went from a high dollar amount to a lot lower. This is our expenditures by object code, and up here is just operational. So again, just looking at our operational fund, we are planning to spend about 51% of that on compensation and benefits. That's typical. That is one of our biggest costs as a school, and so that's normal. And then down here, this is all funds, and you'll see our compensation and benefits. Again, this one did decrease slightly because we did remove 2 full positions. And so we will see a slight decrease in that. Our contract services did increase because we did budget for a lot of our contract services into some special revenue funds, and that is going all there. Our supplies, there was minimal change. Property, again, big decrease. And then you'll see at the end, we have this other here now. We are budgeting our reserve funding in a different object code this year. And so that's why it's in an other, where it typically used to be in our property. Any questions on these? No? Awesome. Personnel costs, so payroll costs, you can see here, we are budgeting for about almost 29 FTEs total. We have some pieces in here with partial FTEs, but we did see a decrease of 2 FTEs. We did cut 2 positions. One was that community school it was funded completely out of that grant, and we know we are not going to have most of that grant anymore. Like Beth was saying, just today we got notified that we'll get up to 40%. So that doesn't even necessarily mean that we will receive, or 40,000, not 40%. I apologize. We might not see that full 40,000. And so we did remove that position, and then we did remove a different position as well, just due to budgetary costs and the potential of that cash sweep. Our additional compensation, it's a lot of the same stuff from last year. We are still doing our enrichment program, and so it's like out of school time. It was on just Fridays before, but it's throughout the week too now, out of school time enrichment. We have our night school teachers, fun night hosts, the Indigenous wellness, facility management, some of these, MDC cleaning, Equity Council. There are a lot of things that we're trying to keep in-house and not contract out to other vendors. And so we are having staff do a lot of them, and it's been great this year. And so we are budgeting for them next year as well. Any questions on staffing costs? Alrighty. Next, we have all of our other basically non-personnel costs. So anything that's not paid through payroll. We have our typical professional technical services, other contract services, the business office, IT, and any other contract services that we might use. Like I said, we have been contracting for a lot of services for our programs, and so that's why some of these are a bit higher. But these are just some of our typical reoccurring ones that we'll see. Our ancillary services, of course, we see those every year. Some years are more, some years we used other services, the audiologist, occupational therapist, that kind of stuff. We always budget for our auditing that we have once a year, our legal services, and then our county tax collection. Down at the bottom, we have our purchase property services. So this is all of our building costs, maintenance costs, property insurance, that kind of stuff, all staying pretty similar in what it normally is. Nothing too crazy changing there. And then on our next one, we have any other costs, travel, training, things like that, supplies, and then our reserves. So we are budgeting for our general supplies like we normally would. Our softwares haven't really changed much in the last few years. They've been pretty much the same. And then you'll see down here our reserves for operational SB9 and HB33. And so these SB9 and HB33 are great to have reserves in case something happens with the building. They can really cover a lot of those maintenance fees. And then our operational reserve does include that $750,000 that the school likes to set aside. Any questions on these other costs? No? So this is looking at our cash balance. Again, like we talked about, we are planning for a sweep. If it doesn't happen, great. But that's what this significant decrease that you're seeing is here is we are trying to spend down a lot of our cash. And so it may or may not go up or down as once we finalize the audit and we get our true up or true down to our cash. But this is just what we're projecting as of right now. We have seen a steady increase over the years. You can see from 2021 all the way through, we've seen this kind of consistent increase. And a lot of it was thanks to special revenue grants that we had. They helped us to reserve our operational funds, which, you know, in moments like this where we can pay off certain things is very helpful. But it's a little bit scary when there's a cash sweep potential. But the school is still looking good. And again, we won't know for sure until that June 30th. Any questions on our cash? So the last two things I want to go over is our school calendar and our salary schedule. I don't know why they're so small on my PDF. So we did, of course, have to make an adjustment to our salary schedule because our minimums did increase. And so we got to that 55, 65, 75. And then we did increase our assistant principal and principal minimums based on statute. Our EA minimum, like I said, is already above what the minimum is. And so we did not have to make any adjustment there. And then we do have our HED level 1 and level 2. The difference between them is level 1, you do not have to be licensed, and level 2, you are licensed through PED. And it's any license, level 1, level 2, or level 3.
Any teaching license. I have an amazing HED instructor who's like, I have an EA license, and I'm like,
Yes.
no, not quite the same thing. Sammy and I did talk quite a bit about whether or not we wanted to raise the HED levels to meet the PED minimums, because they have kind of been following along that track. We decided to hold off on that for now. We are budgeting because we're very optimistic that we will be awarded adult ed funds in this new grant cycle. We have submitted that application and are expecting award letters from the HED department May the 15th or May the 12th. It's sometime that week. Depending on what those numbers are, if there is room in the budget, then if there's an increase, which we're hopeful of, the adult basic education department of the higher education department did receive higher allocations through the legislature this year. And so we're hopeful that we might also see a higher allocation, assuming that we are also renewed and that we're given that grant or awarded that grant. And so as those numbers come in, if there's room, then the intention is to go and raise these minimum salaries as well. Inflation is real, whether you're an adult ed instructor or a PED teacher. We were hesitant to do that until we have some numbers. And so we're hopeful, though, that we can bring a new salary schedule in front of you a few months from now that shows an increase to the HED levels.
Thank you. And just to add to that too, the reason why we're hesitant is we unfortunately can't pay any salary or benefits out of our operational fund for our adult ed program. We do have it in our charter that we can pay for certain, supporting items, supplies, contractors, that kind of stuff to help support the adult ed program, but we cannot pay for any staff members out of operational. And so that's kind of where our hesitation stem from, is if we raise all of these employees' salaries to this amount and we can't meet those, then they would have to participate in non-adult ed programs as well. And we don't want to have to change their job descriptions for that at this point. So we are hopeful to get more of that funding and then be able to allocate it accordingly. And then we just have our calendar here. And Beth, I'll let you go into detail.
Oh, my
about this
fingers are
one.
crossed about the calendar. Everybody cross your fingers and toes. This calendar is very similar to the calendar that was approved this year. So you would think, oh, what's the issue? And PED has changed their guidance on how they're approving calendars. The only concern that I have is those pink Fridays. Those are asynchronous, virtual, and optional programming days. They were approved in this year's calendar. The PED is restricting remote asynchronous learning to only 32 hours, 4 days, or to schools who explicitly have remote learning identified as their means, their model in their charter. Our charter has lots of language like flexible, innovative, supportive, responsive. It doesn't say remote school. And so some schools who've already had their due dates come and go are not getting their calendars approved with this number of asynchronous and optional programming, even though it was approved this year. I'm hopeful that the language that we do have in our charter, which describes a very flexible, innovative, and responsive program, will be interpreted as including asynchronous days. If that's not the case, then the calendar committee will put their heads back together. The fear of not counting Fridays as an instructional day is that we lose that K-12 plus funding that Sammy was talking about earlier. And that's a significant part of our budget. And if we lose that funding, would require program cuts in some space, whether that be, wherever that be. We would have to go back to the budget and really understand how to do that. So fingers and toes crossed. This very similar calendar was approved this year. It is aligned with vision and mission. We do offer programming on Fridays to students, but not all students are required to attend. And so I don't have all of my instructional staff present. I do a lot of my contracted work during that time, and then really focus tutoring during that time. So we'll see what happens, and we'll keep you posted. Other than that, this calendar aligns very closely to the APS calendar in terms of breaks. It does have a fairly short summer. It does include, while it's not as obvious on this calendar, it does have the intentional inclusion of professional work hours on those Fridays as well for staff. This year, this is when we held PLCs. While students were engaged in asynchronous or optional programming, staff is engaged in their professional learning communities, in their MLSS discussions, multi-layer systems of support in terms of how to help students in their campus staff meetings. We are doing all of those types of things on Friday mornings. And then we're hopeful to continue that model. So we'll see. And hopefully the APS agrees that our charter aligns with PED's guidelines and it gets approved at all stages along the way.
Awesome. Well, that's all that I have for budget. Does anybody have any questions on anything we went over? No questions? Okay, well, I will give it back to Sabah then.
All right, thank you, Sammy. And Beth, I think I'm passing it over to you for the next items here. Do we
yeah,
need to
so-
do, just real quick, do we need to do the
We
accounts
could do
payable
the
and all
action
that?
items. Yeah, we could do the action items related to the business office if you wanted to, so that was done, and then we could move on. That's typically how we do it.
Okay, let's do that then. So I need, for the action items, I need a motion to approve accounts payable and the payroll vouchers. Do I have a motion?
I motion to approve the payroll vouchers.
Thank you,
And I
Jody.
second.
Thank you, Charmaine. Those are approved. Oh, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. And the approval of the budget adjustment requests.
Didn't
Can I
have
get a
any, but we might as well approve that we didn't have any since it's an action item. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Can I get a motion to approve the bars that did not happen?
I motion to approve the bars that did not happen.
And I second to approve the bars that did not happen.
Thank you, Jody and Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
I,
All right.
But
And
there is some, and it's written here for you, but there is some special language for approving the budget, and that just includes what's in quotation there.
okay, cool. So can I get a motion to approve the projected operating budget for 2025 and 2026 fiscal year? Conditionally approve this budget pending the final approval by the PED with possible budget changes. And that's related to the whole calculator discussion that we had earlier, that some of the numbers that were presented in the budget might be different when the final one comes through PED. So can I get a motion for the approval of this, conditional approval of this budget?
I motion to approve the projected operating budget for the 2025-26 fiscal year. Conditionally approve the budget pending final approval by the PED with possible budget changes.
Okay, thank you, Charmaine. And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jody. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. And Beth, I think we can leave the rest of the action items for after.
Awesome. I don't have anything additional around the calendar or the salary schedule unless there are questions, and they both require separate approval. So if we wanted to address those action items now, unless there is further discussion that anyone would like to have.
Beth, I just
Yeah.
have a couple of questions about the calendar.
Of course.
I'm assuming that it meets all of the instructional hours required by PED.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess my question is then, if it aligns with APS's calendar, if it doesn't get approved because of the Fridays, how is APS's calendar meeting those instructional hours? Are there weeks before and after, or cut into the summer break that is making up for those hours?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Tina. So they, on all of those Fridays that were asynchronous, they are in person. And so the guidelines that PED is hoping to enforce is in rule, and it's rule that is held up in the courts by an injunction right now. And so there is question about PED's authority to limit the number of remote days. But unless that is challenged again, they are reflexing that muscle. And so APS's calendar meets those instructional hours because they meet in person on Fridays. And what we're requesting are instructional days where not all students, it's not all instructional staff in person. There are some instructional staff providing focused tutoring, and then we have our contractors providing optional programming. And so the APS calendar meets the instructional hours. And then I don't know enough about their calendar. They may not also be hoping to participate in the K-12 plus as to the degree that we are. And so our calendar, and I can pull it back up, but our calendar right now, I will find it. Hold on, I can link it in my director's report. Here we go. Calendar. Let me pull this back up. What's the my lack of mouse that I'm struggling with. This calendar, very similar to this fiscal year, brings us in at 196 instructional days. And that qualifies us for that K-12 plus funding at the highest multiplier, which brings in additional funds. And so last year, the guidance from PED said that schools that did not serve students that did not have geographic boundaries, schools that had it in their charter, or schools that were providing optional programming, that all of that was acceptable. This year, PED is saying that they're only allowing 32 hours of asynchronous remote, of any remote, even if it's synchronous. So the guidance from PED is different. And when we submitted, it was noted in our submission using their template that we were over that amount, of allowed asynchronous hours. Their definition, their guidance last year was a lot broader, and our calendar was approved. This year, they're saying that they're only approving remote charter schools to have days were more remote days than 4. And so we risk them not approving our calendar, in which case we would either have to be in person on Fridays or reduce the number of instructional days for which we're applying. If we reduce the number of instructional days, that affects our budget. But we're well over the instructional minimum. And I believe APS is over the instructional minimum. They may not be trying to get that additional budgetary money by doing the K-12 plus in the same manner that we have been accustomed to for several years. So the guidance has changed, not our practice. And we're just gonna kind of hope for the best. Does that help?
So it does. I mean, as we're voting to possibly approve this, this is then going on to APS, or does it go straight to PED?
It will go to both.
Okay.
APS at their next board meeting will review our salary schedule, our budget, and our calendar. And we're not expecting them to have any issue with it.
Okay.
They could. I mean, their board will also be approving all 30 of their charters, budgetary documents at their next meeting. I think any pushback that we're going to get is from PED because it's their guidance around limiting remote instruction that I have any question about. Besides that, we're in compliance with instructional hours. We're in compliance with a variety of other pieces, but we're out of compliance by being over the allowed number of hours / days that we hope to do remote instruction.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Quick follow-up question. If PED or APS doesn't approve the calendar, would it be worth the hassle of trying to change our charter to specifically say remote learning, or is that just something that would be more trouble than it's worth?
Amendments are possible. And so that would, again, though, have to be approved by the Charter School Division, Joseph Escobedo, and by the APS board. And so it just becomes a timing issue. While that may be something, if this guidance stands and the PED is not willing to think of flexible, innovative as meaning asynchronous remote, it may be worth looking into that amendment. We also renew our charter in the next year is when we'll be preparing to do that in just generally. But to cover, we could look at an amendment. I don't know that it would be possible in the timeline required because APS board would have to approve that charter amendment as well. And I don't know that we would get on their calendar far enough ahead to have our budget approved by PED. So while I also had the same idea and even talked to Joseph about it, we would probably have to submit a different calendar for this budgetary year. But it would certainly be something we could look in for the next, changing the charter.
That being said, and you all know that I'm having to work hard to get my head around all of this. If there was an amendment that there would be remote learning, could that ultimately improve some of Kay's concerns of losing students once they leave MDC?
I think that there could be a correlation there, Michelle. I think that the biggest, I think
I just am thinking, can it be something that's thought about? I don't, I'm just thinking if there's an amendment to help with one thing, could it help with another? I am not in your shoes, Beth, and I don't know what that would look like as far as work and planning and policies and all of that.
I think it's really thoughtful. I'm channeling Chris Pauls, my administrator, my high school administrator at North Fourth right now. He tells students that we're not a remote school. While we're flexible and we allow for very complex schedules, we're a school of relationship. And he feels like the further removed our population is from the actual communication and relationship piece, the harder the obstacles become for them. And so what is pulling our students away from successfully transitioning to North Fourth, in my opinion, is not their ability to access or inability to access remotely, but all of the other barriers that they're facing in terms of behavioral health and economic stability and support systems. And so we find that less interaction with our staff doesn't correlate to better outcomes. And really bringing students in more often leads to their success, I think, in our opinion. And having options to access an opportunity is certainly important. And so I think that you bring up a good point to think about. Don't just do it for the calendar, but thinking also about how does it impact programming and benefit students. And so I think that's important. Having the word remote or asynchronous, though, for our students who don't come in every day, who are working, who are parenting, who are connected all the same, I think could be really helpful, as well as those transitioning students, just making sure that they have that flexibility and that it's not in jeopardy because they can't come every day.
Yeah, maybe it's just part of a pathway that like for 6 months or 1 semester or 3 credits or something. So anyway, thank you. And I was reminded as you were sharing that piece that it can perpetuate the difficulties. I was reminded you had told me that before.
Thanks, Michelle. Also, just want to acknowledge that Martha's able to join us. Welcome, Martha. And I'll pass it back to you, Sabah, for action item D.
Okay. Okay. Well, if there's no further discussion, do I have a motion to approve the school year 2026 calendar?
I motion to approve the school year 26 calendar.
Thank you, Charmaine.
I'll second to approve the SY 26 calendar.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And did we have any discussion about the SY 26 salary schedule before we move on to that one? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the SY 26 salary schedule?
I motion to approve the SY 2016 salary calendar.
Thank you, Jody. And a second.
I'll
I second.
approve or second. Oh, go ahead.
No worries.
All right, I heard Charmaine second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Recognizing the time, I'm going to move really quickly through a couple other items, but feel free to stop me. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to ask for clarification because I'm happy to provide it. I'm not going to go through the whole director's report. I'm going to pull, but I'm happy to answer questions about any of it. I am going to pull out some things that required board approval. And one of that is our Title I budget call. So this is a sliver of the larger budget packet that Sammy presented earlier and does require board approval at the APS level. And so part of what they're asking us to do is make sure that boards understand what money we're receiving through Title I and how it's being allocated. And so there are two sections to our Title I grant. One is very small in the amount of $1,613 and very specific to family engagement. We are planning to use this money the same way that we have in the past, and that is to provide food, typically at our fall festival and our spring celebration, in which we invite families. And so that is easy to budget. It's historically what we've done with the money. On the regular side, our grant this year was $99,456. As Sammy mentioned, this does not include the special appropriation for an interventionist. We decided to keep our interventionist using operational funds to cover her. And we were using our newest reading interventionist. The rest of this money is to our recurring interventionist who we actually met today. So this funding specifically is allocated next year to pay for Kay, who we met is our MDC interventionist and help students just make progress, and especially those students who have less access to the other high school students because of their inability to move to the school pod. Any questions about Title I budget call that I can answer? I'm going to kick it back to you then, Sabah, because this does have a approval, an action item.
So Sabah had to step away for just a second.
Yeah, I think I've been.
Oh, are you back, Sabah? All right, there you go.
Yeah. No, Charmaine, go ahead, please.
Oh no, I saw in the chat you stepped away, and I didn't have my phone on, so.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Can you say that?
My apologies.
No, it's all right.
Just that I just went over the I just saw that. I apologize, Sabah. I'm like, oh, chat,
No,
chats are happening. I'll close that back down quickly. I went over the budget call for Title I, and
Okay, right.
just summarizing very quickly, we're going to pay for food, for family engagement activities, and we're going to pay for Kay, who we met today, our interventionist out at MDC. And so the Title I budget call at the APS level does require board approval. And so I'm hopeful, and if there are no questions or further discussion, that we can bring that action item F to the table.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, if there's not any further discussion on the Title I budget call for SY 26, can I have a motion to approve?
I move to
I
approve
move-
the Title I budget for next year.
I second.
Okay, great. So Tina made the motion and Charmaine seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Hi.
Back to my director's report. The other thing that I want to highlight that has an action item this evening does not require a lot of conversation because you've seen it before, but we do have an updated version of our Pathway to Graduation document, and we've had you review and approve this in the past. So since we were making changes, we wanted to make sure that you were privy and had a chance to provide feedback. There's not much difference to this. This document just starts with our graduate profile, talks about our current graduation requirements. These will be changing over the next few years following legislative changes as well, but this is still what's required for this and next year by the PED. It has some graphs and some tables about how students test in to different levels. The changes, this one compared to last one, are mostly on this flow chart here. The math department, after using it for several months, realized that they wanted a better delineation of how to provide elective credit. So these are students who are performing at the elementary level in math, which we've deemed, unless we are directed differently by their IEP and their special education services, the work that they're doing in math strategies counts as elective credit. The changes from this pathway guide to compare to the last one is really a better breakdown of how students test into those various levels. We were finding that just acknowledging that students were at the elementary level, primary level, so this is grades 1 through 5, essentially, grade level equivalency. We have so many students testing in at this level that we wanted to differentiate even further. So we now have a math strategies A, B, and C. So really looking at splitting up the first and second grade, third and fourth, and then fifth grade levels in terms of building foundational skills. And then the only other change in this document from the one that you approved last fall was limiting the number of attempts that students can take to earn credit through examination. We just feel if they're not able to get it after a couple attempts, that it's better that they work through the curriculum as a whole instead of trying to test out of it. We're trying to eliminate the lucky guesses in terms of progressing through the curriculum. Those are the only changes. Besides that, this is a document that you've seen and approved in the past, but I am happy to take questions or provide any further clarifications if there are any. That is our last action item in terms of things that required your approval today. It is action item G.
Okay. Does anyone have a motion to approve the updated Pathway to Graduation guide? Somebody give me a motion.
I move to approve the updated Pathway to Graduation guide.
All right, thank you, Tina. And a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jody. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we approve the updated Pathway to Graduation guide. And I think that means we're moving to our next agenda item, which is the director's review, and we'll be going to a closed session.
So Bob,
For that-
before we do that, can I have just another very few quick discussion items? Do you
For
mind?
sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I did want to acknowledge that while it doesn't require your approval and therefore it's not listed as an action item, that there is a requirement with our Indian education funding that in an open meeting at least twice a year, we discuss how that money is allocated. And so just very quickly, it's also in my director's report, but we use most of that this year. Our allocation was $73,000. We have received a projected award letter of an increase to $100,000 for next year, which is exciting. We use the majority of that money to increase our social work services. Social workers are typically only paid for out of operational for special ed students. but we provide social work to all of our students, including the often 15 to 20% of students who identify as Indigenous. So the majority of our Indian education funding does go to employ additional social workers. We use another portion of it to pay our it used to be a contractor, and now we're so excited to have in-house an EA who is Navajo, speaks Dene, and is comfortable exploring Indigenous wellness with not only Navajo students, but students from other pueblos and tribes that attend school. And so she receives a stipend for that work. And then whatever is remaining in our Indian education funding, we use to braid resources for our CTE work. We know that career exploration and career pathway development is important to all of our students, and has expressly been prioritized in surveys to our Indigenous students as something that's important to them. So just getting it in the minutes, because it's a requirement of the grant that it is in minutes at least twice a year, doesn't require approval, but happy to take any questions or provide more clarification or facilitate further discussion about how our Indian education funding is allocated. All right. Not going to talk about it, just noting that in my director's report, there's quite a bit of information about all of our performance reviews that are lined up for this spring. Looking forward to giving you more information in May, not wanting to take a lot of time with that, but since it is on the agenda, I wanted to make a nod towards it. And then just taking a few minutes to acknowledge that I sent out some documents this morning. Too late to get on the agenda. Very possible that you have not had an opportunity to read them or review them. But we, at the request of our legal counsel, I wanted to bring you abreast of them, especially since we were meeting today. At the beginning of April, the Federal Department of Education sent a letter to all of the state agencies requiring that state educational agencies, which include the Public Education Department, the K-12 system under which we operate, as well as the Higher Education Department, certify compliance with Title VI, which is legal law relevant to civil rights. Tuesday, April 22nd, the Department of Education at the federal level also instructed the state to forward that request directly to LEAs. We are an LEA. We are a local education agency. The deadline to submit our certification is today. So we got less than 24 hours notice of a federal requirement to certify that we are following the law in terms of civil rights. I forwarded to you this morning the letter that came from our lawyer late last night to all of her clients, the letter that came from the Secretary of Education earlier this week, informing us that the federal government is asking for those certifications directly from us. I also forwarded you the original request from the Department of Education, the Department of Education Secretary's response, and a template that the lawyer has provided to her clients. I also, in that email this morning, which you may or may not have seen, it's literally a few hours ago, included Sue Fox, who is our legal counsel, reminding all of you that she not only represents the school and me, she also represents the board and you. And so you're always welcome to reach out to her. You don't have to go through me in order to confer as a board member with our legal counsel. She offered us some options of how to respond, suggested that I could respond on my own, but encouraged the response to come from the board as an entity, as opposed to me as an individual. And so it is likely that the board, because you cannot take action on this, because we didn't get this information until after the agenda was already posted, and agendas can't be revised within 72 hours of a meeting per the Opens Meeting Act. If you were to give me formal approval or direction, we would have to call a special meeting at least 72 hours after an agenda is posted with that action item. I went back and forth with Sue this morning and said, we have a meeting tonight. What do we do? And she said, well, you can have a discussion. And then based on that discussion, I can make a decision on my own. But if the board wants to respond or the board wants to direct me to respond, we would have to have a special meeting 72 hours after we post a new agenda. In any event, we've missed the 5 o'clock deadline. And I wasn't comfortable responding without your input. That 24-hour turnaround is crazy. And so I don't feel particularly nervous about meeting the deadline. If you read through the lawyer's, Sue's letter to you, which she asked me to forward to you, and I did this morning, she offered several options. We could submit as requested to the feds using her template or a letter of our choosing. We could assume, because we're on a local charter, that the APS's response on our behalf covers us. And we could also assume that because the Secretary of Education, the PED's response said that she was responding on our behalf, we could also assume that the Secretary's response is our response. I'm going to open it up to discussion where you cannot approve an action, and it really is up to you whether you want to, how you want to proceed, given all of that information so very late and still a closed session in front of us with my evaluation on the agenda. So that's the information I have. I open it up to you. I have an opinion, but I'll reserve it until I'm asked by any of you to share it.
Thank you for keeping us informed of this event. I don't know what else to call it, Beth. But I appreciate your transparency, your level of communication, and also getting our lawyer Sue's perspective on the issue as well. Beth and I spoke briefly this morning, and I let her know my first impulse is to not respond on several levels of just that. Considering Sue's opinion around we're underneath APS's district as an LEA, as well as then, the New Mexico PED secretary also gave a response. So my impression is that, an individual charter school in that way wouldn't necessarily need to provide our own letter certifying compliance with Title VI. However, there might be other opinions around wanting to send more of a message, back to the administration, taking more of a stance. And so we are also very welcome to having discussions around that if any board members feel strongly that, our school should be expressing its stance on the issue. Any thoughts from others?
I guess my question is, if we're under APS's umbrella, have they sent a response? And if they did, do they specifically say, or are they planning to say, this covers all of our charters and list them so that Gordon Bernal is covered? Or is the DOE, is there a checklist? And I know Sue said, that there's no way of knowing any of this, but while I feel strongly, like you do, Martha, that we are both covered by APS and by the state, I wonder if the direction to pass this on to individual LEAs implies that there's a checklist, and if there is no response, then what does that mean? And I know no one can can answer those questions at the moment. But I just, reading all of that it gave me such a headache this morning.
You know, I'm going to say I read through it all, Tina, and I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask if APS had responded. And so I'm just going to say sometimes I can be a little bit passive aggressive. And I think if we were to decide to apply or reply, I would suggest we come up with some type of email that we've pulled somewhere and nobody sign it and don't include any names, because that's that initial email. There is no.
It's not signed.
It's not
has no
signed.
name. Mhm.
It came from really, it just came. But, you know, I agree, Tina. I wonder what she, you know, in her letter talking about, in a way, I think what I felt like in the letter was we're probably going to be on a target. No matter what you do, there's a potential to not have the box checked.
Right.
And then the other piece is if they want an X in the box rather than a check, you know. So sometimes things are a flip of a coin, but the craziness anymore is just different.
I saw the response that the New Mexico Secretary of Education sent. But as far as APS, would that be Joseph's office that would craft and send who would be in charge of that?
I'm assuming, I don't know that answer. I'm assuming it would come from Superintendent Gabriella. I can't think of her last name. Gabriella
Blakey.
Oh, thank you. All I could think of was her first name. My assumption is that APS's response, if they choose to respond, will come from Superintendent Blakey. We've not heard. I mean, this is within the last 24 hours that we did talk about it on a superintendent and charter leader call on April 17th, where the secretary assured us that she was responding on behalf of the state and that it was up to independent districts and or LEAs whether they wanted to respond, but that she felt that her response was going to cover us. That was on the 17th. And then on the 22nd, she received another email from the department, again, unsigned email from the Department of Education at the federal level, who required her to pass off the official request to all LEAs within the state. So we heard as late as the 17th that the state was going to reply on our behalf. Her reply was forwarded to you. She pretty much says we're compliant and we question your authority to ask us. I mean, she was not just a yes, we're compliant answer. She drafted that after she spoke to us at the superintendent and charter leader meeting on the 17th, where she expressed concerns and shared some transparency into the conversation at the state level, which was balancing between what they were feeling deep in their souls and staying off the radar of the feds and keeping important federal funding flowing to students. Her biggest concern on the 17th, before she drafted her letter, which we now have, was if she was too aggressive in her response, that she would be putting at jeopardy federal funds. And so she was trying to find that balance. How confident she is she found it, I don't know. We've yet to hear from her. You know, we meet with her regularly, but have not had a meeting since the 17th and receiving these emails from them.
So I guess my other question is, in the past, has Gordon Burnell ever given any individual assurances to the state regarding Title VI?
Not to my knowledge.
So, I mean, because I read the generic letter of, you know, just sign this and send it in, and this is your response. It is so ridiculously vague that you don't know what you're saying yes to. It's like, I don't feel comfortable sending that. Just a blanket, yep, we're doing it. And it is nebulous. Exactly.
And that was Secretary Padilla's response. Yes, we will follow all laws. Yes, we've always followed all laws. We don't understand what you're asking us to certify now. Stop being so vague. The certification is real specifically around illegal DEI. And is certifying that we don't participate in illegal DEI. There's no definition of what that is. There is
Right.
certainly a lot of play on what that could mean in the media from both sides.
I think I realize this is not up for a vote, but I think my initial response would be to assume that we're covered by the both big umbrellas that we fall under. And since the school has never given any kind of individual response to the state or to the feds,
Never to the feds, yeah.
I think, yeah, I think we're okay in just doing what we've done.
And Beth, earlier, were you gonna make a note about anything else that you've heard from APS and what they had
We've
decided?
heard nothing from APS at this point. I don't know where APS's stance is. Sue's letter said if you're a local charter and you're assuming your district is covering you, you should ask them. I've not had an opportunity to ask them. I certainly will. And I'm very interested in how APS is deciding to respond, but I
Mhm.
don't have that knowledge at this moment.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Even though we probably can't do it tonight, even if we did a 5-minute meeting, do we want to have something? Because I kind of agree. I mean, I hate to respond to something so vague and everything else, but do we want something to say we discussed this, made the best decision possible based on what information we had at the time, just so that we have something in our minutes? Or is that not even necessary?
I just want to note that there are 2 templates that were offered in the lots of documents that I sent to you. One was provided by the Federal Department of Education, which was a statement. I certify I am following this and I'm not in this way. And the other template that was provided came from our legal counsel, which is Sue, and her template of a letter was along the lines of, we have, will, and will continue to follow all laws.
Yeah.
So it's a slightly different approach, Sue's template that she provided to all of the schools that she represents. And in any event, we may have to do I mean, this is the discussion. I wanted to have it. I wanted to bring it up, aware of the time. We could have a 15-minute special session later next week, some time to talk about this, possibly some time to get some more information from APS and their approach. We've already missed the deadline, so if that's going to be held against us, there's nothing to be done about it. And then that would give the opportunity for a little more time, a little more reflection, possibly more information that I could pass along, and then an action item where there is a vote, and then it becomes the board that's responding instead of me, which not only aligns to what our legal counsel is suggesting, but also makes me feel a little better. Then it becomes the entity responding and not Beth Dorado without an action item voted on by the board. So my request is that we schedule a very short special session, convenient to when a quorum is available, sometime late next week, and then have a vote on how you would like Gordon Burnell to respond to this request. That's my request to the board.
I agree with that, with the caveat that I would ask Beth that you reach out to APS and ask kind of the general questions. Are you responding? Do you plan to? What will be your response? Are you naming? All of those little things. But yes, I feel better having a special session with a specific agenda that has an action item that shows we discussed it. It came before the board. And then, make a decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good plan of action because then we'll have a little bit of time to discuss with APS what's happening there. And that'll help inform our decision as well. In terms of trying to find a time for next week, Anyone wanna throw out some suggestions? Maybe we'll start with Beth in terms of when might be a good time for you.
Plug up my calendar because I don't know what I'm doing unless my calendar tells me what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience. Next week is, oh my gosh, the first week of May. May 1st is on Thursday, which is just crazy. The end of the day, if we were looking at something similar in time, I can really make any day next week work for me. If we wanted to try to do something a little earlier in the day, Wednesday morning or midday Thursday, both have big chunks of time available on my calendar, which wouldn't require any movement. But if we wanted to do something at 4 o'clock, I could do any day next week. But we do need to have an agenda posted 72 hours prior. So keeping that in mind.
I would not be able to do a 4 o'clock on Thursday. Looks like any other day I could do a 4 o'clock. And on Wednesday, I think you said midday was good, so I'm good on that as well.
Anybody for a 4 o'clock on Wednesday?
I can do that.
I
Oh, yeah.
cannot make the Wednesday at 4, sorry.
I wouldn't be able to do Wednesday at 4 either.
Same. Wednesday at 4 is, I have class at 4, so I can't do that.
And the midday time either on Wednesday or Thursday?
12 o'clock,
Midday-
for example. Like a 12
Midday
p.m.
and Wednesday works. Oops. Sorry if I was talking over somebody.
That's okay. So Jody works 12 p.m. Wednesday, Beth, and I could do 12 p.m. Wednesday. Anyone else? Michelle, Tina? That would be a quorum. There would be 4 of us. So as long as Tina, Michelle, Jody, and I, how do you feel about that? Sabah and Charmaine, in terms of, like, do you want to make sure you're there for that discussion and we should find a different time?
No, I'm okay and comfortable with you all. I won't be able to make the Wednesday. I'm really sorry. Next week is wild crazy. I have Tuesday at like 4, and then the other suggested times just they're full for me.
I can do Tuesday at 4.
I'm comfortable missing the meeting. Wednesday, Thursday are both fully booked up for me.
Okay. So should we go with Wednesday at noon? Okay, sounds good. Thank you all for your flexibility.
Martha, would you have some time with me to get an agenda together? If we posted it tomorrow, then that we would be well within those 72 hours. I mean, it won't be a big agenda.
Yeah.
Or I'm happy to do the agenda my own and mail it and just email it out as well. It would just be the one discussion and action item, how to move forward with this response.
Yeah, I'm fine either way.
Okay.
Like, if you want to take a quick look at it this evening or tomorrow morning, we can do that, and then you can send it out either way.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then Beth, you're okay with sending the calendar invite with the Zoom link? Awesome, thank
I'll
you.
get that out momentarily.
Yeah.
Will it be this Zoom link? I keep going to the one on the agenda because I'm lazy and don't go to my calendar, but I figured it out.
I did
today.
notice that, so we'll keep that in mind for our next agenda, Beth, that we need to update that Zoom link on the agenda.
Or I simply can go to my calendar and go from there. I was able to do that today.
No, it's okay, Michelle, because I did the same thing today as well, so it's good to
I
have it on
appreciate
there
the
for everybody
reminder.
else.
We'll get the Zoom links
Yeah.
lined up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really
Closed
quick,
session still on the table today?
Beth, really quick before the closed session, if you guys do, I just sent everyone that was here for the budget presentation, the form that we need for APS.
I just need Sabah, Michelle, and Charmaine to sign it if you can. It should be in your email.
Gotcha, I see it.
Thank you. I just have to submit it tomorrow to APS since I wanted to grab it while I had everyone.
I see it. And okay, come on.
Really appreciate all the hard work that you've done on the budget this year, Sammy. I know that there were some challenges in having to kind of work up to the last minute with a lot of uncertainty. So we really appreciate you.
It seems everyone's up to the deadline because we're not getting the information we need still, but we're trying our best.
Oop.
Eric and I had a little back and forth earlier today, and I just want to verify that my understandings were correct. If we do go into closed session to finish out our meeting this afternoon, then it's by invite from the board who attends a closed session. And so those that like Eric, we don't take minutes during a closed session. We're not taking notes. It's not it's viewed as a separate kind of category in the Open Meetings Act. And so I would just put Erica into the waiting room, and Sammy, if she intended to come back into the waiting room. And then after the closed session, you could also choose not to invite me to the closed session, or invite me. The focus of today's proposed closed session is my evaluation. And then after that portion, then Erica would need to come back in and capture in the minutes that we return from the closed session, and then any other business that's discussed after that, including the closing of the meeting. And so I just wanted to make sure that I had all of that right, and hopeful that we can move forward. We're almost up to 6 o'clock, but I appreciate everybody's stamina, as it was a packed agenda, also with some unexpected news.
And I just wanted to let you all know I'd been chatting with Charmaine that her phone was about to die and she didn't have the charger with her. And so that's why she's dropped off. Sammy, were you able to get her signature before she dropped off?
Yes, I'm seeing
Okay.
Charmaine's. Michelle, I'm yours now. So let me.
And we still
It
have
was
a
just
quorum.
after I signed it, it said reload because somebody had signed, so I was having to reload. So I didn't know if I really had to sign it again or not.
Let me pull it up. I see Sabah, I just got yours.
I am also out of town and discovered I did not have a phone charger yesterday. And so can relate to, we love the technology until it dies or stops working, right? And then it's like, oh, technology.
Michelle, if you could try again, it doesn't look like it went through.
Okie doke. I'm going back
Thank
to my
you.
email. No worries.
And I'll just use the opportunity now to say thank you so much, Sabah, for leading the meeting. I really appreciate you standing in. It gave me that time I needed to finish up the workshop for today. And so it looks like things went really smoothly. So appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks. I was doing my best Martha impression.
There you go.
Sabah did a great job.
The agenda really helps to be able to like, okay, we're gonna do this, this, and this.
Okay, it didn't do that this time, so I think you have it, even though I used my first grader penmanship. It was like
Yep,
a first grader's font and I didn't change it, so.
Perfect. We're all good to go. I have all my signatures. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys too.
Thank you, Sammy. All right. Well, then now is the time for the closed session. And so, yeah, it seems like Erica, we won't take very long, so we won't keep you waiting too long, but you'll be in the waiting room and the rest of us will be then in the closed session to discuss the evaluation committee's director's evaluation. And by Sammy, I assume you're jumping off.
Do we motion to go into closed session?
Thank you for mentioning that, Erica. Yes, do I have a motion to move to a closed session to discuss the director's evaluation?
I
move
motion
to
to go
go-
into. Oops.
Sorry, Jody, go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say that I motion to go into a closed session.
Thank
Did
you,
I-
Jody. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Tina. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are moving into a closed session.
Do you need to stop recording it, Beth, before?
Thank you. I
You're
do have to
welcome.
stop recording. I will pause.